This Saturday, the 28th of September, history will be made. One side will be in total euphoria of what is a taste of the ultimate success. The other, pure utter disappointment and disbelief of what could have been. Heroes will be etched into football folklore. Moments like these is what defines grand finals. Let's preview the 2024 AFL Grand Final between the Sydney Swans and the Brisbane Lions. Hello everybody, welcome back to another video, as always, on the Marshy.01 YouTube channel. Now, I'm so excited for this grand final, I cannot wait. If you guys are excited just as much as I am about the grand final and you enjoy AFL content like myself, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, like the YouTube video, comment down below, all that fun stuff. We're trying to hit 2k subs by the end of the year, so yeah, anything you guys do is greatly appreciated. For this grand final will actually be the first grand final in about 18 years that will not feature a Victorian-based side. Now, it was all the way back in 2006, so it was the sequel just as good as the original, which was actually, surprisingly, Sydney versus West Coast. I reckon it's actually pretty ironic because both of these sides actually used to be Melbourne-based teams. You know, Brisbane used to be Fitzroy before they merged with the Bears and became the Brisbane Lions. And before Sydney moved up to Sydney, they were known as South Melbourne. Now, it says these sides haven't played off in a grand final before, but technically they have, dating back 125 years ago. Obviously back then when Sydney were known as South Melbourne and then Brisbane was known as Fitzroy. I wonder what the game was like back then because footy has evolved so much over the last years. You know, you date that back 125 years ago, like, oh, what a time to be alive. Anyways, we're here to analyse and dissect the two teams that have made it all the way to the big dance. So let's just start things off with the Sydney Swans. Obviously, it came as no surprise. Sydney Swans are arguably the best team in it all year. You know, they deserve to be in the big dance this year. You know, they finished the year as the minor premiers with 68 points and a percentage of 126.7. Now, they started the season in red-hot form, winning their first 3 games by over 20 points, but the next game in round 4, they somehow lost to the eventual Wooden Spooners in Richmond. But look, that game was just an anomaly because after that game, they went on and won the next 10 games in a row, destroying any side that came in their way. Now, look, that would be mainly because of their big 3 midfielders were in absolutely rare air. Now, Errol Gulden, Isaac Heaney and Chad Warner were playing like prime Chris Judd, Ben Cousins and Kerr. Yeah, it was absolutely insane watching them play because they'd all have great games where they get plenty of the footy, and then on top of that, they'd also hurt you on the scoreboard. But after that, the Swans would have a very shaky 6 weeks. They ended up losing the next 5 of their 6 games, their only win coming against the 17th place North Melbourne, where they got the job done by 79 points. During that block, they come up against a very hungry Port Adelaide side who got the job done by a whopping 112 points in Adelaide. In that same game, the Swans didn't actually score a goal until the 23-minute mark of the second quarter. When they scored that goal, the Power had already put on a whopping 72 points, so the game was practically already done. The following week, they come up against a very plucky Collingwood side trying to save their season and get the job done in a thriller by 3 points. They then would finish their home away season with convincing 30-plus point wins over the Bombers and the Crows. To kick off their final series, they would come up against their arch rival in the Battle of the Bridge against the GWS Giants in their qualifying final. And now the Giants, in every prior final that they had played against each other, the Giants had gotten the job done. And the Giants were looking like to continue that streak as the Swans were down at every break, looking almost out of reach at certain stages. But in the fourth quarter, one man decided to put the Sydney Swans on his back. That man was Isaac Heaney. He would have one of the better finals second halves that we'd ever seen, racking up 15 disposals and kicking 2 very crucial goals and taking one of the best hangers you'd ever seen. He also paired that with Chad Warner's amazing 13 disposals and 7 clearances in the fourth quarter to help the Swans somehow come back and get the job done by 6 points. Obviously, the Swans will then have the next week off and then they'd face off Port Adelaide in a preliminary final. Now, look, in all fairness, Port were pretty banged up after coming up against a really plucky Hawthorn the week before, so the Swans just got the job done very convincingly. But in saying that, all 3 of their midfield guns were on song. You know, Warner, Gulden, Heaney, all had plenty of the pill. And had a couple of players kick themselves back into form. Tom Papley back to his best, kicking 3. And the Swans look primed to redeem themselves after the 2022 Grand Final against the Cats. Alright, now the Brisbane Lions. Brisbane, after the heartbreak that was the 2023 Grand Final, losing to a resilient Collingwood side by only 4 points, started its campaign off to a shaky start. They would end up losing their first 3 games of the season, 2 of them being at the Gabba, mind you, where last year, you couldn't beat them there. Like, it was an absolute fortress there. So some cracks are already starting to show. They'd finally get their first win in round 4 against, North Melbourne by 70 points. Now, look, their next 7 games just seem a little bit inconsistent, but that's also because they were getting absolutely ridiculed by injuries at that point in time. They're having players dropping like flies, doing ACLs left, right and centre. They would end up winning 4 of those games and drawing one of them to the Adelaide Crows. And I don't know, something just clicked for the Lions, because after that, they'd end up going on a 9-game winning streak. They pushed themselves up on the ladder, up to top 4 contention, and there was practically a lock. All they had to do in round 22 was beat the Giants at the Gabba. But look, the Giants had other plans. The Lions would kick the first 4 goals of the game before the Giants were able to claw their way back up and ended up winning the game by 18 points, making Brisbane's top 4 chances out of their own hands. The Lions would then lose to Collingwood in an absolute thriller by 1 singular point. The Lions would then win their next 2 games, finishing in 5th position with 58 points and a percentage of 121.9. To make their way back to redemption for that last day in September, the Lions would have to do it the hard way. The first week of finals saw them come up against a Carlton side that really wasn't in the best of form, and the Lions made them look absolutely second rate. Brisbane kicked the first 60 points of the game before the Blues were able to kick their first. Now the Blues made the scoreboard look somewhat more respectable, but look, this game was practically over at half-time. In the second week of finals, the Lions came up against none other than the GWS Giants, the one team that stopped their top 4 chances right in their tracks. It was over at NG Stadium. The Giants were red-hot favourites to set themselves up for another prelim final, and it was looking like that was going to be the case. The Giants were 31 points up at one stage. The Lions, they're really resilient. They kept pegging back that lead piece by piece, and eventually they saw themselves in front, and miraculously, in a final for the ages, get the job done by 5 points. Now look, prelim final week. They were coming up against a red-hot Geelong who had just pumped Port Adelaide only a few weeks prior. After the home away season that they had with their injuries and stuff like that, to make it this far, pat on the back to them. But the Lions just weren't done. They had unfinished business. And this prelim final will go down as one of the best prelim finals we've ever seen. In a wet weather affair, the Cats seemed to have all the momentum in the first half, being up by 3 goals going into the third quarter. But the Lions had a third quarter surge, and somehow at the end of the third quarter were up by 2 points. But God, that last quarter was a quarter for the ages. Ollie Henry had seemed to kick the game winner for the Cats up at the 23-minute mark before Cal Archie, with the ice in his veins, kicked his third for the match, putting the Lions in front before Cam Rayner on his left foot outside 50, and the 26-minute mark would put the game to bed. And so the stage is set. The Sydney Swans, the best team all year, up against the Lions, who have unfinished business after last year's heartbreaking grand final. Now, before we talk about the tips and predictions, let's go through some of the players who are in absolutely ripping form for both sides. Starting us off, Isaac Heaney, he's proven to be the Swans' most important player this final series especially. He's been the match winner for them. His stats for the finals against GWS, he had 30 disposals, 3 goals, 8 score involvements, and 7 clearances. You pair that with his 24 disposals, 2 goals, 8 score involvements, and 6 clearances against Port. He does everything. Pair that with Chad Warner, who's the second key cog in that midfield. He helped Heaney in that fourth quarter against the Giants, with his 13 disposals and 7 clearances alone in that quarter. When he's on song, Sydney usually have a good day. So, against GWS, he had 27 disposals, 7 clearances, 7 score involvements. Against Port, he had 21 disposals, 2 goals, 5 clearances, and 5 score involvements as well. Now, you can mention those 2, but you also have to mention the third one in Errol Goulden. Elite use, he's run and carry with the ball, and his absolute silky skills just add to that dynamic of that Sydney midfield. Against GWS, he had 23 disposals, 5 clearances, and 6 score involvements. And then against Port Adelaide, he had 27 disposals, 6 score involvements, and 4 clearances as well. You pair that with a severely underrated James Rowbottom, who's just a tackling machine. You pair 4 of them with, hands down, has been one of the best pickups this year in Brodie Grundy for the Swans. Now, look, these are probably Sydney's one woodwork. Their midfield, they love to kick goals, but their forwards, look, they have been in some pretty okay form, but you have Joel Marty, who kicked 4 goals against Port and obviously had that match winner against GWS. Logan McDonald kicked 2 goals before being subbed out against Port with his ankle. He's under a bit of an injury cloud, and then he also kicked 1 goal against GWS. Now, Tom Papley, he's kicked himself right back into form. 2 goals against GWS, 3 goals against Port. If Sydney has it on their terms if both their midfielders and all their forwards are kicking goals. Now, onto the Brisbane Lions. Obviously, you can't talk about the Lions without the clearance king himself, Lachie Neale. He just knows how to find the footy. Against the Cats, he had a whopping 31 disposals, 12 clearances. GWS, 19 disposals, 7 clearances. Against the Blues, 27 and 9 clearances. You pair that with Will Ashcroft, who's, after returning from his ACL, has somehow gotten better. Against the Cats, 22 disposals, GWS 27, Blues 20. He's just very consistent. And you think they don't have enough midfield power, you pair that with the silky Hugh McCluggage and Josh Dunkley. The Lions midfield actually stacks up against the Swans quite well. And obviously up forward, their forward line is actually full full of people who can turn games on their head. Final series alone, you've had Joe Danaher who's kicked 6 goals, Zach Bailey who's kicked 4, Cam Rayner's kicked 5, Kyle Loman's kicked 5, and Cal Arche's kicked 6 as well. You've also had Charlie Cameron who's also kicked 6. Look, that is still plenty of firepower, but they do have their other 2 key tools who just haven't been able to, find the big sticks. You've had Logan Morris, but look, he's pretty young, so you take that with what you will. But the other big one is Eric Hipwood. He's only kicked the 2 goals this final series alone. I don't know what's wrong with him. Now we move on to my tips and predictions. So obviously Sydney are the red hot favourites for a reason. The firepower in that midfield, the run dash off the back line with Blakey, and then they lock down defenders in Rampy, McCartan and Lloyd. It's just a matter of their midfield can get on top and help score, because if their keys don't score and their midfield don't score, they don't really have anyone who can really kick it for them. The Lions are going in as underdogs, but after all their form, they're actually a serious real chance, I reckon. Their mid stack up really well against the Soil, and their forward line's full of firepower, but their defence, I reckon, is the only real concern. They've had a couple of defenders who've just been a little bit out of form. So yeah, Payne, he's been beaten on numerous occasions in this final series, but look, he has been injured in some of them, so I guess you take that with what you will. But Dane Zorko, he's had an absolutely unbelievable season, All-Australian, as we all know. He provides that excellent use out of defence and has been a revelation all year after Kadeem Coleman went down in round 0. And there's been times we've been caught out playing really aggressive and being hurt on the way back. But look, their key tools in Harris Andrews and Ryan Lester have been great. They've been solid down there for them. Probably the biggest key out would have to be Oscar McInerney. Dislocated his shoulder twice last week in that prelim. It gives the opportunity for Darcy Fort or a young Henry Smith to play. Really, Grundy should be able to dominate and give his midfield first use. I think it's an extremely close game, fingers crossed, but I actually predict the Swans will be up at half time, but I don't know. I just think the Lions will somehow find a way to surge home and get the win. The Lions have been in close encounter after close encounter. They know how to play a game out till the end. One of the greatest finals runs we've seen in a long time. Just like the Bulldogs in 2016. Look, I know they won it from 7th, but to top off Brisbane's year after what they've been through, it just would be the cream of the crop if they went on and won it. Now, the Norm Smith medal. Now, obviously, if Sydney were to win it, and they are the favourites for a reason, like I kept saying, it'd have to be one of their 3 midfielders. My guess, it probably would have to be Isaac Heaney, just because of, he's such a game winner for them. If the Lions do end up winning it, I have a hunch that Hugh McCluggage will have a great game. He's in really good contention to win it last year. The Lions had actually gotten up. Just a player that no one seems to really talk about, and I feel like he's just made for the big stage. So yeah, my final prediction is Hugh McCluggage for the Norm Smith and the Lions to get up in a ripper of a grand final by 8 points. So yeah, that is my dissection and preview of the 2024 AFL Grand Final. As always, guys, if you guys did enjoy this video and want to see more AFL content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment down below, all that fun stuff. Comment down your predictions as well. And yeah, I'll see you all in the next video. Cheers.